single player looked amazing.
It sounds great.
Classic mode is really fun.
You can feel the SOCOM 1 too.
Guys like me that have been playing since SOCOM 1, that's what it's all about. It's classic mode.
Definitely has a SOCOM feel to it.
Abandon looks amazing.
I think a lot of people, old fans, new fans, everybody's gonna, find something they enjoy in this game.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 30 of Zipline, the official Zipper Interactive podcast. I'm Chris Roper.
I'm Jeremy Dunham, and today we are joined by two guys that you all know very well, lead designer Travis Steiner and competitive multiplayer czar of all, Kevin Schmitt.
Hello.
Kevin is our first week-to-week returning guest.
That's right.
In the history of the podcast. Well, other than ourselves.
And all I got was this lousy T-shirt.
Right.
Which you had to bring
has
from
no
home.
writing on it.
We got a lot to talk about today, so with that, let's get to the Z-Cap.
Well, first up, Mag 211 is coming later this month. We're finishing up the QA approval process on it right now, so we don't have an exact date for you. Once we do get that approval, we can give you the date. But we think that there are going to be some things in there that you guys definitely like. We're going to have a bunch of memory fixes that I think should address some crashing and freezing issues for those of you that get them, and some other cool tidbits. So we'll wait until we actually have the complete blog post to go into that, but just expect that in the next few weeks.
And just a reminder to kind of go back the past couple weeks here, and this is sort of the point of this show here.
Year 2000.
Yeah, in the year 2000. A couple weeks ago, we had the big media and community days here at Zipper, where people came in to play the SOCOM 4's multiplayer. We had both, a bunch of websites as well as some guys from the community. And then we also very recently had some stuff going on in Europe, where Sony Computer Entertainment Europe showed SOCOM 4 at a big media day there. We've had lots of new media and stuff like that come out, so you can find video and screenshots and impressions from all your favorite websites. So be sure to look around at the web for all that information.
Looking to the future, though, in addition to some other reveals that we have planned for other aspects of the game in the near future, we're going to be going to PAX East. Travis and Kevin and me, and not Chris, because he's going to go have a baby, whatever.
Not me, but...
Yeah, your wife. We're going to be there on March 11th to 13th, so look for us there. You're going to be able to play competitive multiplayer at the event. That's all we'll say for now. We'll have additional details in a future blog post, but we look forward to seeing you.
So as mentioned, a couple weeks ago, we had the big community and media days, and our last podcast, even though it followed those, as we said last time, was earlier in the week. So this week we're going to talk about, the kind of the reports that have gone up there. We're going to talk about maybe a little bit of confusion with some things that came out of it. And basically, we're going to go over what everybody thought about the game and some things that we're looking at now from the feedback that we got. But before we get into specifics on those kinds of things, a lot went on in those 2 days. Kevin and Travis, what were kind of some of the bigger things you guys took away from these events?
I just thought it was really cool to meet everyone in person and actually be able to talk about all these things that we've been holding close for so long. It's been so focused on single player. We've been waiting to talk about MP for a long time, and just being able to finally do it was really exciting for the entire team.
Yeah, and like Travis said, it was just good to unveil that. I mean, I've been biting my tongue since E3, and now that we get a chance to see it and get the public to see it, and they had fun playing it, which was the other thing. And the overwhelming response to the art and the sound, it was just really good to hear that stuff.
One of the first things we want to get into here is that some people are a little, maybe not quite sure how some of the modes play out. So Kevin, can you go into detail on the 3 out of the 4 modes we've talked about, being suppression, last defense, and uplink, and then also how their classic counterparts work?
Sure. So suppression is a team deathmatch game type. The teams start on either side of the map and then basically fight to just dominate each other with kills. And we've placed some rare pickups in the map and supply crates to sort of provide choke points and strategic places to go to. Last Defense is a mode-changing game type. And so in more detail, there are 3 satellite locations in the map that are neutral. So each team fights for control of those locations.
A, B, and C.
A, B, and C, yeah. And once one team has taken control of all 3, it triangulates the location of the enemy HQ. So those 3 then get locked out, and so you already own those. And the enemy headquarters gets revealed, and then that attacking team that has dominated the center ones then assaults the enemy base and plants an airstrike beacon to call in an airstrike and destroy that base. And
those are the 2 modes that they played at the media day and the community day.
Yeah, those are the 2 modes.
Suppression and last defense.
Yep. And then Uplink, which we didn't play but is in the trailer a little bit, that is sort of our version of Capture the Flag. So there's a defending team and attacking team. The defending team has data stations located through the map closer to their side. If you draw a line in the half of the map, it's all kind of on their side. And they have laptops there, and they random spawn in where the data is located. And the attacking team comes in and then goes to those locations, tries to steal that data, and then once they do, takes it back to their upload station to essentially steal valuable intel.
And then we have a fourth secret mode that we're not talking about yet.
Right.
So what is the difference, though, as Chris mentioned, between playing that in standard mode versus classic mode? What are the differences for each of those?
So in classic suppression, we have the classic rules apply, the no respawn. Well, that applies to all classic modes. But the differences in particular to the modes is that we don't have those placed weapons, and the supply crates are inactive. So we want to keep that more pure. With Last Defense, the same number of points are there, but the interaction times are greatly reduced.
It's much faster to claim the points.
Yeah, it's like 5 seconds, because you don't want somebody in a team game, in a respawn team game, you really want your teammates that are backing you up, so the times are a little bit longer. But in a classic mode, they're greatly reduced, so it's like you can go up there and get those things really quick.
Well, particularly because there's no respawn. You have a lot more to lose by
we don't want you.
Point.
Yeah, standing there for any amount of time is going to get you killed. So we wanted to reduce those times. And then in uplink, to win an uplink game, you need 3 pieces of intel, and we've reduced that to 2. And again, the interaction times are reduced on those.
In terms of the experience system and the weapon modding, we've seen some confusion come out when we first announced this as part of our media days. I think some people think they're one and the same, but there's actually 2 separate systems.
Correct.
Could you guys explain exactly the experience system, how it works, what it unlocks, and also the weapons?
Okay, so the general experience system, you gain XP through doing actions in the game, such as killing, such as in Last Defense, taking one of those control points, blowing up a base. You get XP awarded through all different sorts of actions. And also helping your buddy, as some of the guys saw in Community Day. If a guy is taking a point and you protect him, defend him while you're around that point, you'll get buddy experience points for helping that guy take that objective. So those all go to build up your character level. And
we also have merits, right?
Those are the merits those are the merits that you get. So I think that's called buddy system as a merit for that. So those go to build up your level, and we have 1 through 100 levels. The level is a number that we use to primarily matchmake with. So we don't want to throw a level 1 guy in with a level 60, right? Because that would level 60 has been playing a little bit longer. So that is what we use for matchmaking. In sort of above or wrapped over those levels are 12 ranks. And what the ranks do is unlock character skins, weapons, gear items, and a few other things. So that's how we progress those. So independently of that, we have a weapon leveling system. So each weapon at its base level is a pretty good weapon. I mean, we haven't gimped anything down to be a poor weapon. But if you'd like to really hone the power of that weapon, you pick that weapon, and any hit or kill that you get with that weapon, kills are awarded more experience. But you build that experience on a particular weapon, which then unlocks mods. And each weapon has 5 mod levels. So, you might start a mod 0, and then a mod 1 would be an ACOG, and then a mod 2 would be an extended magazine. Mod 3 might be a low suppressor. And so each weapon has its particular order and set of attachments that get added onto that as you mod up.
To clarify, you can turn them off. So people were asking about, are we stuck permanently with those? Like, if you don't want to suppress them, you can turn them off.
Certain mods can be turned off, like the optic system or the suppressor. If you really don't want either of those things, or you want to change which one you have, you can actually go in the armory and change which one is on the weapon.
But an example of something that would stay would be like an extended mag.
Yeah, something where there's really no negative associated with the attachment. I mean, some of those other things are more up to preference. Maybe you just love hearing the sound of your weapon, so you don't want a suppressor. Mm-hmm. But for something like an extended mag, we didn't really think there'd be too many people that would.
No, I have too many bullets. No, thank you.
Yeah, we took great care not to put any negative impacts on the mods.
Yeah. Another question that comes up a lot in association to this is, well, because there's respawn mode and classic mode, does that mean that you can essentially mod up your weapon much quicker if you play respawn versus classic?
Well, if you look at how the amount of kills you get in a respawn versus a classic mode, obviously there's a disparity there. So we've added a classic modifier, so to speak, so that you get the actions that you do in a classic game are worth more to help balance that out.
One other thing I want to add to the weapon leveling system, I think some of the feedback we've heard, there was some concern about whether or not this is going to create too much of a disparity between some of the new players and the guys that have been playing a long time. And that was something we looked at, quite a bit. And at the end of the day, I think the thing that's going to make it work great in SOCOM is the fact that we have fairly realistic damage system in SOCOM. So what you're going to see there is not a huge difference in terms of the amount of damage that one gun is doing over another, or in terms of the overall effectiveness. Definitely modding up your weapon makes it more effective. But because SOCOM's a more realistic shooter, it only takes a few shots in most cases to take a guy down anyway. So we think that, certainly in playtests we've had internally, we haven't seen a huge disparity between the new players coming in at mod 0 and the players that have modded their weapon up all the way. If anything, it just gives you a little more tactical flexibility in the weapon you have.
And again, it's also based on the player's skill. We don't do anything to make the weapon, like Travis said, there's nothing that increases damage, but it's all just enhances your skill with that weapon. So,
while we're on the subject of experience, can you talk about how worldwide rankings and the leaderboards and things like that work?
I think Seth mentioned this on the Community Day. We've gone away from the global rating to have like that one top player. And we've transitioned to more of a leaderboard approach where we have in-game leaderboards and web leaderboards that have different categories. And they're broken up. I don't have the specifics on me now, but like there's games won, games lost, and then there's like kills, deaths. All those stats are leaderboarded, and then you can essentially sort the leaderboard by those categories, by those stats. So then you can see how you rank in kills, in deaths, in assists.
There won't be any overall formula to determine who the number one player in the world is using a collection of different stats. It's just based on a per stat basis on what you want to look for.
Correct.
What about the clan system? The clan system is something that we've definitely confirmed and we talked about a little bit, but we didn't really show off or go into detail about simply for time reasons. But can you guys elaborate a little bit on what that is and the limits, what you can do with them, pretty much the full Monty?
Yeah, it's hard to explain it without actually looking at it, so I can see how there's some confusion there. So you can form a clan, and the clan limit is 128 players. And we have a clan challenge system built in, and this we hope this will the fans really like this. So with this clan challenge system, officers and clan leaders can enter the clan challenge lobby, and once they do, they essentially form a party. Then other members of that clan, non-officers of that clan, if they then go to the clan challenge lobby there, if there's multiple clan parties that have formed, they can pick their party, right? But if there's only one, they'll go into that party. Okay, so then you've got a clan leader.
So, like, if your clan has 100 people online, you could pick which sub.
And if there's multiple officers that have created multiple clan challenges, right, then you'll see a list of those to choose from. So, maybe on the boards or something, you'll organize and fight and say, okay, I want these 16 guys to be here. I'm going to start this game here. So those players will go in. Well, they'll see that, and then you imagine the screen is split down the middle, and on the left is your clan party's listing. And the leader can see the people coming in, and then has the authority or the ability to remove or add players as they see fit. The minimum player count for a clan challenge is 4, so you have to have at least 4 people. Once you have those 4 people, you can set your clan as ready. And what that does is that on the right side of the screen is a listing of all clans that are ready, or actually it's ready and not ready. It's all clans that are online. And it basically shows their status. Either they're ready, and I'll get to what that means in a minute, not ready, or in a challenge. If they're ready, that means that you can then click over to the right side of the screen and select that clan that is ready, and then issue a challenge to that clan. So what that will do is then bring up a list of preset clan challenges, and then you pick the one you want, and you pick send challenge. That clan leader on the other end will see that challenge, will look at that, and he has access to your rating. He has access to how many people are in the party, and then he can either accept or deny based on that invitation. So obviously, if you're a clan of 16 and you're challenging a clan of 4, they're probably not going to accept it. They're probably going to decline. So they can see that information. So both parties can make that judgment before the challenge goes out of, like, is this a valid challenge that I should take or not?
What's an example of some of the preset challenges that you can that you can partake in?
We have like I think 10 of them, and I'm blanking right now. But we have abandoned 7-minute rounds, clan challenge, classic suppression.
I mean, we have quite a bit of custom options we can choose from, so we've tried to mix up the gameplay as much as possible. So in some cases, some of these challenges are 4v4 matches, where we really want to try and have it take place on some of the smaller maps and be more focused on that smaller action, whereas other ones maybe are, a much bigger game with full 32 players on some of the bigger maps in the game.
Yeah.
So we have a variety in terms of the scale of the games, and then variety in terms of the types of game modes and custom options that we have for those clan challenges. And that's something we can also take a lot of feedback from the community, and it's easy to update, just like the custom queues that we'll have available for players. So
which we're going to get into in a minute.
Yeah. So if all the clans out there are really wanting to play a new kind of challenge that has X, Y, and Z custom settings, it'll be very easy for Zipper to then update the clan challenges and make that available for clans to play on.
And so a couple more points on that. Those challenges are ranked as well, so you get stats and all that stuff. There's flexibility there too. So if you want a group of 16 versus 16 on a smaller map, you can do that as well. So the flexibility is there to choose from those maps. And the final point is we've also introduced or supported clan-on-clan challenges. You can have inter-clan challenges. Those do not grant XP and experience because, again, we don't want people padding their stats. But you can practice on a match before then you take that challenge to another clan.
And since you can set up kind of those subgroups inside the clan, you can say, I want these 8 specifically against these 8, and then have them...
Correct.
Yeah.
So you already brought up the custom lists. That's one of the questions that we get pretty often, or what is it that you can customize in a game? And for those of you that weren't aware, we mentioned in our last podcast, and we've mentioned on the forums, we had a tournament here at our community day where we'll put half of the community members against the other half, and the winner actually got to determine the rules for one of our custom playlists. We're still getting back all of the suggestions from them, so we can't tell you exactly what that will be yet, but we can tell you right now what they could choose from. So, Travis, what are some of the, or not some, what are all of the options that you can adjust?
Ooh, let's see if I can remember them all off the top of my head. Well, first and foremost,
There's a lot.
Weapon sets, right?
Now, just to clarify, is this stuff that we can set internally based on feedback, or is this also things that users can create in their own custom rooms?
So in some cases, it's a little bit of both. So I'll try and make that clear as I go through each item. Kevin, remind me if I miss something. So first and foremost would be the weapon set. So do I want to play a game with, say, just snipers and shotguns or assault rifles and SMGs? You have that kind of customizable options, as well as the kind of gear items you bring in. And that's something that'll be available to all players can do that.
But on a Zipper note, behind the scenes, we can pinpoint specific weapons to restrict, or so you can have like all snipers except this one. So that gives us a little bit more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. In addition to that, obviously the kind of spawning you're going to do. So whether you want more, the new respawn, or whether you want more traditional non-respawn. Another option we have behind the scenes is to have revive. So basically, you could play a game where respawn is turned off, but if you get to a teammate within a certain window of time, you would have the ability to revive him and get him back into the battle. So that's something we'll be using, for starters, in our custom games only. You can set obviously the number of rounds, the length of rounds, whether it's a medley. So if you want to, play a series of maps.
What is the maximum number of rounds that you can move it up to?
I think it's 7, isn't
it? Behind this, for Zipper or for the community?
For both.
The community, I believe, is 7. And then I think, the network guys might kill me, but I think that we can go up to approximately 32 million.
I saw 31 in the notes.
31,
the other day.
Yeah. So it's something
it's
around
plenty.
there. Yeah, there's a lot. So that's a long game.
Yeah, maybe we'll make that one of the custom ones later on. It's like the all-night marathon.
The endurance challenge.
And then something else that I think that we've had a lot of fun with is just being able to set the movement speed. So you could use the standard movement speed, you could make it slower, you could make it faster, and then also setting the different kinds of damage, whether you want standard damage, reduced damage, or increased damage.
So again, the community side of that, they have presets that they can choose from, but we can go in and pinpoint more a wider range of values.
Would it ever be possible at some point where, let's say that we recognize that one option is very popular in terms of one of the playlists that we've created with an option the community doesn't have immediate access to? can we then go in and add that for them in a future patch or something along those lines?
It certainly would be possible. Something we'd have to take a look at. But, for now, there are definitely a few options which we've kind of kept to ourselves for now. Just kind of an extra special bonus when we do, want to have maybe something a little more unique that players haven't had a chance to try out on their own with their own created games. It gives us the ability to, host a custom game that's maybe a little more unique.
Plus, sometimes when you go into these matches and you're finding these games, if you see something that says normal, low, or high, that's much easier than if you see somebody that tuned it to 1.17,
Right.
and there's another guy that did 1.13, and you're like, I don't,
Exactly. Sometimes having too many options can be a bad
Yeah.
thing. It's better to have, discrete things that are distinctly different from each other. Did I forget? Obviously, the size of the match, also the specific maps that you'll play on will be important as well.
Game types.
Game types. So actually, I can go through a couple of the custom games we're aiming to have up and running for the game at Ship. Obviously, some of these are subject to change, but this is what we're targeting right now. We're going to have a custom game mode called Sniper Alley. This is an 8v8 suppression match where we use classic rules, but with higher damage. And this will be basically limited to sniper rifles and shotguns only, and the only gear item you'll have is smoke grenades. And this will be seven rounds, 5 minutes apiece, and it'll take place on our biggest maps. We're also looking to have Last Defense Run and Gun. This is 16v16. Obviously, Last Defense game mode. This is be respawn on, faster movement speed, and damage reduction, and we limit it to close quarters weapons. It would be 1 10-minute round. So that should be a lot of fun. Tactical uplink, 16v16. It's uplink, revive on, and no respawn. So this is, again, something unique we're doing only in the custom games. All weapons are available, and we'll be looking at having 2 10-minute rounds for that. Freeze tag is essentially the same thing, only on suppression. So again, having a suppression game where there's no respawn, but you can always get in there and try and revive your buddies when they go down. And again, no weapon restrictions on that. It would be 7 5-minute rounds for that one. Here's one that's a little bit unique. I think it'll be really interesting to see what the fans think of this. Based on the early feedback I think we've heard, I think this might be a fan favorite. We have a custom game mode called Scrum. It's 8v8 suppression, no respawn, faster movement, higher damage, and we basically wanted to make sure we limit some of the weapons, so no sniper rifles, no frag grenades, so you actually have to get in there as quick as possible and try and take out the other team. And we have basically 7 1-minute rounds. So it's really quick, really fast-paced. Get in there and try and take out the enemy as quickly as possible, and then every minute it's resetting, and you have another chance to do it.
And at the end, we talk about our milestones and then iterate on them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that we would look to do a medley of maybe 3 maps. And then, the other one that's not in there is obviously the fan submission, which we're still taking feedback on that one. But
it's coming soon. We'll actually have that by the end of the week. So by our next podcast, we'll be able to tell people what that is.
Yep.
So out of the gate, that's what we're looking at for the custom game modes. Obviously, there's a lot of flexibility for us to change those up depending on the feedback we get. But I think we're pretty excited about them.
So speaking of the community, and this is something that we've been getting a lot on the forums, they want to know, and as you heard at the beginning of the podcast, you heard a medley of various comments from people who appeared here at our community day of the feedback that they had for us, and not only the people that were here that attending, but also the fans on the forums based on what they know. They want to know, how have we incorporated some of the feedback from the community into the game since we've unveiled it to them?
A quick disclaimer on this, because we're going to go some of these points very specifically, but a quick disclaimer on this is, unless we say otherwise, the timing on these things is all TBD. So some of it it's already in the game, which we'll mention some of those things. Some of it will hopefully come out in an early patch. Some of it may be further on down the line. So these are things that we're looking at. Maybe some of it's in, maybe some of it we're going to look at, but it won't go in. But we're going to talk about some of these things in detail.
So, I mean, one of the most obvious changes that we've made based on feedback is that we've updated the crosshairs. Can you talk a little bit about that, Travis?
Yeah, so that was definitely one of the questions that came up with the community today. Was basically, would we see an updated crosshairs that maybe looks a little more like traditional SOCOM crosshairs? I think there's 2 parts to the crosshair discussion, if you will. One was wanting to see for lack of a better term, the tick marks that make up the crosshairs, seeing those be a little bit bigger on screen, a little closer to the old games, and then seeing if we'd put a center dot in. So we have already put in the bigger reticle, the bigger tick marks. It does look a little more like traditional SOCOM. The center dot's a little bit trickier, and I'll go into a little detail on that. It is something that we have tried, and it is not something we were going to ship with, though, out of the gate. And here's the reason why. In looking at the variety of weapons we have, we find that the center dot is just not a great solution across all weapon classes, because we've really tried to add a lot of variety between the classes of weapons. And the center dot works great for a gun that's highly accurate, maybe our more accurate assault rifles and other guns that just have, really precise shots.
A sniper rifle.
Exactly. When you're talking about, though, maybe a weapon that has a little more, bullet spread on it, the center dot really gives you negative feedback. You can run into a situation where maybe the dot's lined up on a head of an enemy, and you pull the trigger, and the gun's not that inaccurate, but it just happens to just barely graze by the guy's head. And then we looked at that and kind of found ourselves, if I think from the perception of a player, if the dot's on the guy's head, you expect the bullet's going to go there, and that to have that level of accuracy across all weapon classes would really imbalance the general feel for the different kinds of guns. I mean, it just doesn't work for certain weapons. So we're not going to ship with the center dot, but what we are going to do is we're going to continue to look into this issue after finishing the game. And I think something that would be a reasonable approach to this is that we might pursue having another reticle with a center dot for, I guess, maybe the weapons that are more accurate. So maybe we could divide it per class. I know we had touched upon the goal of having custom reticles a number of podcasts ago, and that's just not something that we're going to have for the shipping version of the game. But it's not something we've given up on. It is something we will continue to look into. I think it seems relatively likely that we will see an option at some point down the road for players to choose to have an alternate reticle with the center dot for the players that either have a weapon that is very accurate, or for players that understand the trade-offs with that and they just still really want the center dot. So something we're still looking into. We definitely appreciate the feedback. It seems, I'd say it's fairly likely that we'll get that option down the road.
And I will say that the new reticle that we do have in the game, I do prefer it to the one that we had even a few weeks ago, because even without the center dot that a lot of people would like to see, it is a lot more helpful in letting you know where your bullets are going to go, thanks to those larger tick marks. I mean, those things alone have made quite a bit of difference.
Yeah. Actually, I'd like to touch on one other point related to this. One of the pieces of feedback we got a lot, kind of related to the reticle, but also related to the shoulder camera view, which gets talked about a lot. A lot of people have been asking, can you still fire from the hip, even though we have now this shoulder camera view? And I understand where a lot of that, concerning questions coming about, given that most games these days that have this shoulder camera, over-the-shoulder aim view, make it very difficult to hit targets when you're not in that camera mode. And that's not the way we've approached SOCOM 4. We've been looking at that camera view as more of a lower level scope view almost. It's just a way to see a little bit closer and also slow down the movement, on the reticle. And so in SOCOM 4, that's definitely an option you have, but you definitely can still fire from the hip. Granted, not all weapons are great at doing that. We've tried to add, variety amongst the guns, and some guns allow you to do it better than others, but that is still an important part of the moment-to-moment SOCOM gameplay. So I bring that up only because I don't want anyone to interpret that the lack of center dot means that the guns are going to be so inaccurate that you have to go into the shoulder camera view to shoot them, which is certainly not the case.
Another piece of feedback that we got that this has been in there already and still in the works is movement speed, both in terms of overall movement speed in any direction and in terms of how quickly you can strafe.
Well, a couple of things here. We've always had a goal for Classic Mode to represent movement speeds that are a little closer to the older SOCOM games. No doubt about it, based on feedback, and anyone here can know just by loading up the games that SOCOM 4 isn't quite as fast as the old SOCOM games when it comes to the standard single player and the standard modes.
Having said that, let me interrupt real fast. Is the people that came to the community day thought that it felt really good. They wanted it just a little bit faster. Yeah. So they were pretty happy with it, just a little bit of a tweak, which while they were here at the day, we were saying we are going to speed up Classic Mode a little bit more.
And we have.
Well, let me just point to that point. Sorry to interrupt. In Classic has already been set for a faster movement speed. But that particular attribute wasn't enabled on the servers that we had running at Community Day. So we've already increased it, but on shipping servers it'll be higher. But the guys, at Community Day, were not playing Classic with the intended faster speed.
Yeah. So we have a number of options that we've played with, even since the Community Day. We have a specific strafe speed setting that we can set to have Classic strafe speed be a little closer to the forward movement speed. In general, we have a move rate modifier that makes Classic mode a little bit faster. And then based on the feedback, we've also just slightly increased the strafe speed and even the normal mode. But it's a very slight adjustment because we do feel that the standard movement speeds we have in there now work great for single player and work great for the standard multiplayer modes because it does encourage, I think, a tactical style of gameplay, particularly in single player when you want people to not just run and gun and dance out in the open, but rather to tactically move from cover to cover. I think the general movement speeds we have in there are working great. So, but definitely for Classic mode, we will have faster speeds available.
And the thing to note for people that were here to play the game or have just heard about it is that all of those things that we just covered will be in the beta version when we release the beta. You will see those improvements already implemented. One thing, though, that we won't see implemented in the beta version, because it's not a simple tweak, as it were, is pushing the camera further back in multiplayer. This was planned prior to the Community Day. It's been planned.
We just couldn't confirm it when they were there.
Exactly. And the feedback from folks have reinforced our decision to do that. But that won't be in the beta, won't be in the shipping version of the game. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, certainly we know that that's been one of the more key pieces of feedback is wanting to make sure we have something that's more a Classic camera. The number one thing we wanted to set out when approaching the multiplayer camera as respect to the single-player camera is making sure that it's centered on the character, because you get into some strange situations where if you're around a corner, say, you can get in a situation where you see an enemy that can't see you, or there's an enemy that can see you that you can't see him. So having an offset camera in multiplayer just doesn't work very well. So that was the number one goal, center the camera. We still, though, wanted to make sure the multiplayer camera felt very immersive and had generally the same distance away from the character that we have in single player, because we really like that close, gritty feel that it gives to the game. Currently, we only have an option for one multiplayer camera. We've been tuning the game around this one camera. So, there's a lot of considerations when you deal with camera collisions and other bugs that can come about when you have a variety of camera settings. So we've put most of our attention on that to make sure that the multiplayer camera, the primary one that we're shooting for, is as polished as possible and really the best for, immersive gameplay. That being said, we do know that our hardcore fans really want the pulled back camera. So something we'll be going to continue to look into is exposing an option down the road for players to choose between the standard multiplayer camera that we've set up and something that's a little bit closer to the Classic camera setup, which is really the main difference between the Classic and what we have in there now is just simply how far back from the character it is. And we need to make sure that we work out any of the kinks that might come with that with respect to, again, colliding with geometry in the environment.
One other little adjustment worth noting that will also be in the beta is it was a small thing, but a lot of people brought it up at the Community Day, and that was that the friendly names were a little too far above people's heads and that they couldn't quite necessarily tell who was on their team. That was actually a bug going into the show.
Yeah, that's an issue we've known about that issue for a while, and we're working on to address that.
It'll be fixed by the beta. I think it's already fixed in our most recent version, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, so you don't have to worry about that. It will be closer to the heads. So there's another plus for you.
Now, we do know that a lot of other things have been brought up, such as adding back in grenade arcs for Classic mode, or adding in the D-pad lean and things like that. And we're still weighing on, looking at these things and thinking, would these be things that we would want to add in the future? And none of them are actually very simple. The grenade arc thing is simply a button press thing. We're running out of buttons. D-pad lean is a completely different game-changing addition and things like that. So a lot of these are things that we're, still, should we maybe look at doing these in the future? But, no promises right now. And, however, there are some things that won't make it into the game, such as pistols. The chance of that is practically zero. Travis, can you talk about some of these other elements
here?
That's
a specific design choice.
Yeah. Really, it goes back to day one, building SOCOM 4, and a desire to really emulate what we thought was very successful in Fireteam Bravo, which is, obviously the option to have two primaries. And the main reason we wanted to pursue this was the tactical flexibility that it gives you. I know personally as a player, when I play in the past, I've pretty much brought an assault rifle into every fight just because of the versatility you get. And I think what we end up seeing is a lot less usage out of the special case weapons that work for specific scenarios, whether that be a shotgun or sniper rifle. And so I think having two primaries allows you to bring, two different tools for different situations within a map. A lot of our maps have areas that are good for close quarters combat and areas that are good for more long range combat. We wanted to give players the option to go between the two weapons they have in order to, best handle each situation without feeling necessarily like, I came into the map with this gun. Oh man, I can only stay in this part of the level because I'm going to be completely ineffective, say with the shotgun, if I go out into the wide open area. So having the two primaries, again, allows you to really pick and choose and say, you know what, I really want a shotgun because it's going to work great when I go into the inside of the coastal fort bunker. But man, when I'm crossing into the open, I sure hope I have something a little more long range. So it's something that, internally, I don't think I've ever heard once anyone say that they miss the pistols. Just simply because you're getting more by having more primary weapons.
It's been more of a we miss it in theory than in practice sort of a deal because, I missed them before I started using them too, is where's my pistol? And but then when I started playing it, I realized I didn't really care that it wasn't there anymore. But I think the other thing to remember, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, is the reason we don't include that as one of your options is because when you're when you're given a pistol or the option of an SMG or shotgun, the pistols kind of become moot.
Yeah, exactly.
There's really no need to have them there.
The only way you'd be able to equalize that is by giving the pistols, an unrealistic level of damage to compensate for that. Maybe everyone could have Desert Eagles in that case or something. But really, who's going to choose a pistol when you can bring in the heavy machine gun?
On the other side of the argument, though, you have a lot of people who have vocally said that they wish that there were pistols. Why can't we just add pistols back into the game? Explain a little bit about why that's not something we can do.
Well, it really just our development focus has been elsewhere, and from day one we haven't captured, say, animations for the pistol system. Everything from reloads to you have to have different locomotions for all the different, basically ways to move through the environment, how you move in cover mode, et cetera, et cetera. So when you add that together with, the weapon models themselves and
the game's been balanced to not use
making
them.
sure the balance, it's just the undertaking that it would take to get that in just wouldn't be worth it when we could spend that time on other things that go hand in hand with the game we've already built.
Now, speaking of the cover system that we just mentioned, the D-pad probably being very unlikely to come in at some point. Some people since the Community Day, and certainly in the votes that we're getting in for the Community Day as well, so the people that have played this are saying, hey, if we're not going to have D-pad, why don't we put cover in classic mode?
I got to say, that was probably my biggest surprise takeaway from the Community Day. Not because I don't think the cover mode's awesome, but more so that I kind of had built into my head that hardcore SOCOM fans have just decided that they don't want cover mode in all cases. And I think that definitely at the Community Day, that was one of the takeaways, is that I saw people either using it and enjoying it, or people not using it and they didn't seem to care that it was in there. And so, given that, and given the fact that at least at the launch of the game, we're not going to have the D-pad lean, it seemed like most of the feedback we've been getting is we would like to see cover turned on in classic mode. And so, we've taken that feedback, we've looked at it, and that is something that we have changed based on the feedback specifically from Community Day. Classic mode will have cover turned on by default. Now, that being said, we still will have the custom options available for players if they want to create their own custom game, or they want to vote on a zipper-hosted custom queue, that we could still have games where cover is turned off as a specific option. But when it comes to the default settings for classic mode, it will be turned on now.
We have some other questions that have come up in addition to what are we altering or modifying based on feedback and reactions to the game. And one of them is one that we haven't officially announced yet, and that is when is SOCOM Special Forces, as it's known overseas, coming out in Europe? We haven't announced a specific date for it yet, but you can definitely look for an official announcement regarding that in the near future.
One of the other things that people have been talking about a lot since the Community Day,
and this one gets Kevin all riled up.
It's everywhere.
Oh yeah,
is the radar and E-tags popping up at the end of a round. Kevin, can you talk about how this works, why it's in there, what its purpose is, all of these things?
Right. So, there's two differences between the radar is in the regular MP maps, and that. Well, I'll talk about that first. That basically has, if you imagine the player has three spheres of influence around them, when the enemy tags come up. They have a close radius. If the enemy is in that radius, they'll come up. There's a farther radius that if they have if they fire in that radius, they will come up on the radar. And then depending on the enemy's suppressed weapons or non-suppressed, either their level of suppressor or their lack of suppressor, that range gets a little bit further out and closer in. And then if an enemy does damage to you as well, they will show up on the radar. And
also in respawn, if they come near protected spawn points,
then
we show any enemies that are right outside your doorstep trying to camp the spawn point.
Yeah. And so that being said, if someone's across the map shooting at you and not hitting you, they won't show up. So they can still take pot shots at you. So what we've done in Classic, and this is based on internal and focus group feedback, is we found that people enjoy winning and losing. And we've had in SOCOM 2.
You enjoyed losing?
Well, I mean, I enjoy
winning
winning
and not finding somebody for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Right. So in SOCOM 2, when I played, there was a lot of. There's a lot of that was a tactic that people would draw out the map to do that. And so we, based on all the feedback that we got, we put these, it's basically an enemy UAV pass. So in the last 2 minutes of the match, anybody alive gets revealed on the map. And it sounds, I think you really have to experience it before judging it, because it sounds like a cheat. But when playing it, and you realize that I can see them, but they can see me. Internally, we found that sort of enhances the intensity of the experience, because you can't hide anymore, but you're both visible. So you know where each other is, and it's just a matter of how am I going to get the drop on this guy now? And again, to promote a winner and which I like, and and a loser, which I don't like.
And I actually think we really saw this working effectively at the community day, because we had a point in the Classic game where we had 2 guys left, one on each team, and everyone left their stations and was kind of watching over everyone's shoulder, waiting for the climax of this match, seeing who would win the final gun battle. And I really think that system was what helped draw those 2 players together to have that final showdown and really end in exciting fashion. Whereas without that, it could have ended with 2 guys circling around the map, not finding each other, and the game just ends, which is definitely not as exciting as the shootout we saw happen.
Yeah. And that happened a lot. I mean, that was one of the funnest things about Community Day, was when we played Classic, and as people started to die off, you could see the crowds getting around the guy who was still alive, and then on either side of the room you get the we did it, or so that was a lot of fun.
And that was something we were talking about earlier, what we took away from the last 2 weeks. That's something that really stuck out for me, and we were talking about this earlier in the week, is you could feel the energy in that room.
Yeah.
Of the people having a good time, and that, regardless of little features that they love or wish were improved, that is what matters, is the fact that you're in there watching them have a good time. That's what's rewarding about making games.
And the strategic talk. I mean, those guys were yelling out, because we split the room. Well, at first there was a lot of smack talk against our internal QA guys, which was awesome to see. But then we had the community play each other, and we split the room, one side on one team and the other on the other. And they were calling out tactics. Actually, even when they played QA, they were yelling out sniper on the ridge. Or I was just amazed at how quickly they picked it up, and they were in the moment, and they were shouting at each other, for help or whatever. And then the smack talk comes later. So everybody seemed to have a good time.
So why are we going with matchmaking instead of the original SOCOM lobby setup? I'd say that this is brought up quite often. Even before we announced exactly how it worked, people would always bring up the matchmaking versus lobby argument. A lot of the hardcore Classic fans prefer lobbies. Talk a little bit about why we're going with matchmaking versus lobbies.
So the main goal was to get people in games fast and playing together. And our desire is that just builds that community more, strengthens that community, getting people into games, and not 25 people sitting 1 out of 16 in 1 out of 16 rooms waiting for people to join their game. We're getting these guys together, and we're getting them playing and meeting each other, and then offering the custom rooms and offering the clan challenge, the accessibility of the clan challenge. Then we hope to escalate that community. And if they want to take rivalries further, we've offered these things. So for me, it's all about just getting people together quicker and faster.
Yeah.
We do
Same.
custom rooms, but we're not having them ranked. The user created rooms are not ranked,
Right. Our custom rooms, the ones that Travis listed earlier, are ranked.
which are under the custom playlist options when you see them.
Right.
Yes. And that's how it's known. And that is actually something that we really like to touch on that wasn't necessarily clear to everybody, is that there are 3 main modes of the game. There isn't a primary mode. There's standard,
Right.
and there's classic, and there's custom.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about what separates those, and can you also talk a little bit about why we're not ranking the user-created rooms?
So, well, we kind of touched on this earlier, the difference between those modes. The standard has a rule set of respawn, and that's just sort of the basic thing. And then the classic has the no respawn, no health regen, quicker interaction times. And then the custom is our way to create variations of those modes. Again, and we talked about this the last podcast. Since we have such a great community, we can listen to them and see what kind of stuff they like, and we have the option to change those things and provide ranked rooms for them. So that's kind of the main differences between those things. Like custom is almost like like a playground, an experimentation area where we can mess around with different settings, and so we're really happy to offer that as well. So yeah, nothing is like this is the way you should play it, and they're separate but equal entities, and I think they'll appeal to everybody.
I mean, one of the keys there is I think just the variety you get out of it. When you play classic SOCOM settings versus say some of these custom games we have set up versus the standard game modes, really each one has a unique feel, and so I think that the neat thing there is that I don't necessarily see it as when SOCOM 4 comes out that certain players are only going to play in one set of games and never go to the other groups. I really see it as depending on how you feel like playing the game that night, you're going to have a lot of options available to you. And certainly Classic has a feel to it, Standard has a feel to it, and there's pretty much limitless options in terms of what we can provide with the custom rooms.
And that customization plays into why also that the user-created rooms aren't ranked, though, right? Because there is a point you reach where you're creating too much of a split audience.
Right. Again, and that just fractures the player base. And we wanted them to come together and play together.
We don't want people always creating games that are going to be tailored to necessarily what they're good at and not necessarily the other team. We want to make sure that it's a level playing field.
Now, on the subject of modes and all these sorts of things here, one of the big things that came out during the community day, certainly during the Q&A panel, and then afterwards on the forums, is everybody was wondering where demolition is and why is it not included in the game as one of the shipping modes.
Well, from day one, SOCOM 4 was all about moving forward, not looking behind. We love the team-based gameplay that the earlier SOCOMs have had, but honestly, as a team, and I think the best thing for the franchise is to also bring some new stuff to the table. So when it came to assigning where we wanted our development effort to go, it was on creating new modes because we found that very exciting. We think what we have is going to be exciting to the SOCOM fans, and it's going to give you that team-based gameplay that people are looking for. That being said, having worked, on those earlier games and be a part of those, having been a part of those earlier modes, the people here on the Zipper team love all those classic game modes, and we haven't forgotten about them, and we certainly hear the fans loud and clear that they really miss Demolition. And the only thing I can say on that is just because it's not shipping with the game doesn't mean for sure that they will never see it. Anything's possible, and we'll definitely keep it in mind.
Let's move on from there. Jeremy, why don't you get to the last question here on our list?
Yeah, one more before we go, and that's the push to talk is something that comes up. It's actually tap to talk is how we're framing.
Yeah, can you explain that real fast?
Yeah, so real quick, just to clarify on that, it's D-pad up opens the channel for 10 seconds. You don't need to keep your finger on the button. So you just tap it to open the channel, and then you can talk.
Then the concern that some folks have about it being on the directional pad in order to talk and move at the same time, you think are eliminated because they only have to hit it once and they can go back to what they were doing.
I wouldn't say they're completely eliminated, but I would say that it's greatly reduced. Again, when we were talking about button, I think, Chris, you mentioned button configuration and space. That's always an issue, and we're still evaluating all that stuff. But I think once people understand that it's a tap and you open that channel, that may alleviate a little bit of that debate. And again, it's not. It's all about button real estate, and we are looking at different options.
Well, that brings us to the end of this week's show. Hopefully, it was a lot of stuff that a lot of people wanted to hear discussed in this week. But for questions and comments, you can always send things to zipline@zipperint.com.
or you can visit our official forums, which you can find at forums.mag.com or forums.socom.com. Every week we put up a thread asking people to ask questions, and we're going to continue to do that. So don't forget to drop in and ask the questions that we used today, including those that we didn't get to or we forgot to bring up. We're definitely ready to tackle any and all that you throw at us.
Yeah, don't forget to find us on Facebook and Twitter. You can find us on Twitter at Zipper, and you can find us on Facebook by either searching for Zipper Interactive or quite simply SOCOM.
Next show will be on February 25th, and on that one are going to be two designers, Christian Sadak and Blaine Higdon. And it's going to be an interesting show because they're going to talk about something we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, so we can't really talk about the topic yet.
No, but which is kind of weird because after we're free, we're talking about everything. Oh wait, no, there's still more.
There are still a couple secrets that we have that we're holding off until a little bit later, and one of them we'll talk about by then. So
that's right, and it should be a good show. Make sure you send your questions in, and thanks again, guys, for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I know you have to go finish the game now.
Yes.
So until next time, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.